the circles we walk. The morning had started like any other Sunday. Eric had packed his usual day hiking gear, filled his red water bottle, and downloaded the trail map to his phone, though he hardly needed it anymore. The state forest trail system had become his weekend sanctuary since the divorce, a place where Sarah's absence felt less like a void and more like solitude. The parking lot had been empty when he arrived, which wasn't unusual for early October. Tourist season was over, and the serious hikers wouldn't show up until the leaves turned properly. Eric liked it better this way. The solitude felt earned rather than imposed. Now, checking his phone again, 2:14 p.m., no signal, he still wasn't worried. Not yet. The familiar weight of his day pack pressed against his shoulders as he pushed through a strand of spider silk stretching across the path. The web's architect was nowhere to be seen, which struck him as odd. Usually, the trails were alive with activity this time of year, spiders rushing to catch the last of the warm weather. Come to think of it, everything was a bit odd today. The birds had gone quiet about an hour ago, their absence creating a vacuum that seemed to swallow even the sound of his footsteps. The last trail marker he'd seen had been weathered to illegibility, its blue paint nearly black with age. That wasn't right. The Parks Department repainted them every spring. He'd chatted with the maintenance crew about it back in May. "Getting paranoid in your old age," he muttered, forcing a laugh that sounded too loud in the strange silence. The trees seemed to absorb the sound rather than echo it back. The forest felt different somehow, like a familiar room with all the furniture shifted 2 inches to the left. His phone now read 2:47 p.m., but the quality of light filtering through the canopy suggested late afternoon. Eric pulled out his trail map, orienting himself. The main loop should have brought him back to the parking lot by now. He must have missed a turn, though he couldn't remember passing any junctions recently. The phone buzzed unexpectedly. For a moment, hope surged. But it was just a low battery warning, 15%. He could have sworn it was fully charged when he'd started. He always charged it overnight before a hike, a habit born from years of Sarah's gentle nagging about safety. A flash of red caught his eye. Another hiker? But no, just a red water bottle lying in the undergrowth. He frowned. It was identical to the one in his pack's side pocket, down to the small dent near the bottom from when he'd dropped it last month. Eric reached down to pick it up, his hand trembling slightly. The bottle was empty, bone dry inside, with a faint residue of mineral deposits around the rim. The light dimmed further. His watch read 3:15 p.m., but the forest had taken on the murky quality of dusk. Eric picked up his pace, leaves crunching under his boots. He'd been walking downhill for a while now, he was sure of it. All trails led to the parking lot eventually. Just follow the descent. That's what every hiking guide said. His phone vibrated again. The battery indicator now showed 82%. Eric stopped dead. That wasn't possible. He checked his watch again. 5:45 p.m. No, that couldn't be right either. He'd only been walking for... How long had he been walking? The thought slipped away like water through cupped hands. The ground had leveled out into a small clearing. Something about it made his skin crawl. The trees formed an almost perfect circle around its edges, their branches weaving together overhead like grasping fingers. The center of the clearing seemed to sink inward, though when he looked directly at it, the ground appeared perfectly flat. It reminded him of those optical illusions Sarah used to love, the ones that changed depending on how you focused your eyes. That's when he saw them. Water bottles. His water bottles, scattered across the clearing in various states of emptiness. Maps, torn and weathered, the corners curled with moisture damage. A protein bar wrapper with the exact same batch number as the one in his pack. A single hiking boot, his size, the same brand he was wearing, but so weathered the sole had nearly separated from the upper. "This isn't real," Eric whispered. The words felt thick in his mouth, like he hadn't spoken in days. His tongue was dry, despite the fact he'd been sipping water regularly. Hadn't he? "This isn't real." Movement caught his eye. Through the trees, a figure walked parallel to the clearing. Eric's breath caught in his throat. The man wore the same blue jacket he had on, the same boots, even the same slight hitch in his step from an old basketball injury. But this version of him looked fresh, clean, like he'd just started his hike. Another figure emerged from the opposite direction. This one wore tatters, its skin gray, and pulled tight across its bones. Both figures walked with the same gait. His gait, neither acknowledging the other's presence, neither acknowledging him. Eric's legs gave out. He sat heavily on the ground, which definitely sloped inward now, a gentle but inexorable pull toward the center of the clearing. His phone buzzed one final time, 100% battery. The light had changed again. Or had it? He couldn't remember what time of day it was supposed to be anymore. The tree branches overhead seemed closer now, their pattern more deliberate, like a web or a net. How many times had he walked this trail? How many versions of himself were still walking it? He thought of Sarah, wondering if she would notice his absence. Would she call someone? Would they find his car? Or would it, too, become just another iteration in this endless loop? Through the trees, he caught a glimpse of red, another water bottle, waiting to be found again, and again, and again. Eric closed his eyes. When he opened them, the clearing looked different. Or maybe he was in a different clearing, or maybe it was the same clearing on a different day. A different loop. He stood up. What else could he do? He began to walk. 3 months later, a park ranger found an abandoned car in the day hiking lot. Leaves had accumulated on the windshield, and rust had started to form around the wheel wells. Inside, they found a phone with a full battery, displaying a single timestamp, 2:14 p.m. The ranger made a note to check the trail markers in this section. Hikers had been reporting strange shadows between the trees lately, figures that walked the paths in endless circles, never quite crossing paths with the living.